You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
What is up, good people? Welcome back to another episode of... Actually, I'm doing something a little different this week. It is not your typical Tone Mob episode. Please allow me to explain. As many of you are aware, but not all of you, I do another podcast every week with my friends Brian Wampler and Richard Oliver called the Chasing Tone Podcast. I've done that for almost as long as I've done this show, but it's typically a very different format, and I use the term format very loosely because really it's just an excuse for Brian, Richard, and I to get together every week and horse around on the microphone. We talk a lot about gear, but we talk about a lot of nonsense as well. It's a chat with buddies almost more than anything else. And somehow that show has also turned into a pretty popular guitar podcast. I seem to have carved out a rather weird niche for myself in this internet space. Anyhow, interviews aren't typically what we do over there. However, we do them once in a while. Do them. Yeah, okay, anyway. We've had some amazing guests over there over the last couple years, and we thought for the Christmas season, it might be fun to do kind of a podcast gift exchange is what we're calling it. So the next couple weeks over on the Chasing Tone feed, there will be some Tone Mob best of episodes. And here on the Tone Mob feed, I'm going to publish some of the interviews that we did over on Chasing Tone. We thought it might be a fun way to kind of cross-pollinate because not everyone that listens to Chasing Tone listens to Tone Mob, and not everyone that listens to Tone Mob listens to Chasing Tone. But I think there is a lot of appeal for both audiences there. So we are doing this little gift exchange, and this one is super special. On this episode, Brian, Richard, and I are talking to Brent Mason. Brent Mason, if you don't know, is one of the most prolific session guitar players on the face of this planet. You have almost certainly heard him, whether you knew it or not. He was huge in 90s country, but that's not the only thing he did. We get into some of that on this episode. We talk a lot about his beginnings and how he showed up with a guitar trying to get Chet Atkins' attention and didn't really work out the way he wanted. Well, maybe I should just let him tell it. Anyway, now you know what's going on. Let's get into this interview with the legendary Brent Mason, courtesy of the Chasing Tone podcast. Here we go.
So we have a very, very special guest today. My all-time favorite guitar player in the entire world. Not Blake, but Brent Mason. Welcome, Brent.
Well, thank you.
Glad to have you on here.
The entire world. Wow, I'm not worthy of that.
He's not just saying that either, because I've been recording this podcast with him for close to a decade now.
Yeah,
that's remained one consistent thing. You know, he goes in and out of various interests, but that fact right there is consistent. He's always held you in high respect.
Well, I'm flattered. Thanks, Brian. Coming from you, that means a lot.
Oh, I appreciate it. So,
as he throws kisses and
listeners, Brent is winking at us and indicating that he is lying right now.
Oh, don't read my face. Don't read my eyes.
That's not true, though, Brent.
This is audio.
Audio only. You are too nice, though, because when we asked you to roast Brian for his birthday, you didn't want to do it. You didn't want to say anything mean about him. You're like, I can't roast him. It's Brian. I'm like, roast him hard.
If anybody deserves it, it's him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I forgot what I did on that. I said on that. I thought I roasted him.
You did. We convinced you in the end. I think your good lady wife managed to coax you into saying mean things.
Okay.
And it was excellent.
I remember that.
It was awesome, man. It was so good.
I remember exactly what I said. It was a lie.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's all right. Everyone knew you were teasing. So let's kind of, for the listeners, let's kind of start back to where young Brent Mason finds a guitar. And you lived in Ohio at the time. In the woods. Just found one laying around. Kind of walk us through that process of you're in Ohio and walk us up to you've now arrived at Nashville as a young kid.
Oh boy. I'll cut some of it short.
Sure. You could kind of summarize
first of all,
it.
my dad played, all my grandmother, grandfather, brother, dad, mom, all played music. You know, they were kind of weekend warriors, but they played all their lives every weekend. So I was definitely around music all that time, you know, albums playing in the house all the time, from Ray Charles to Conway Twitty, Merle Haggard, you know, Hank Williams, Jerry Reed. But anyway, I didn't connect. I wanted to come to Nashville. I always thought that as a kid. That's where it's happening, you know.
Even as a child, huh?
Yeah, even as a kid. But I was a big fan of Jerry Reed's from very small age. And so I did come to Nashville and play with my mom and dad brought me, and I followed Chet Atkins into RCA. We pulled up in the back of RCA Records, and I saw Chet Atkins going in the back entrance, and mom and dad, they pushed me out of the van with
Go get him.
with a gut string guitar.
Right.
So I looked like I just got, you know, lost from a mariachi band. Somewhere. I'm in a parking lot. And I went up behind him playing some, you know, some guitar licks. You know, I was like he was going to turn around and, you know, grasp me and,
Right.
and hug me and say, I found him.
Right.
He act like it didn't even happen. He went into the door and I went, you know, I just froze there with my mouth open.
Right. Like, what do I do now?
Yeah,
He just said
but
no.
I did have a couple of appointments at RCA with this, at the time was the head of A&R, Roy Day. And he gave me some good advice. He said, man, I love what you're doing. It was copying Jerry Reed. And he said, but you're 16, you need to go back and finish school. You know, there's a lot to experience and learn before you come here, you know. But I like what you're doing. And he said the right stuff, you know. He was complimentary and you know, made it known that finishing school came first. So I kind of, you know, went, oh, okay, I guess that was a good, but I wanted a record deal. I wanted to play on a, you know, Nashville show or something.
Right.
Well, went back home, finished school. Then came to Nashville. My mom sent a cassette tape. I had written a bunch of instrumentals and played. She got connected with Paul Franklin's ex-wife, then wife, Sarah Franklin, and she passed my cassette on to Paul Franklin. And the next thing I heard that I think somebody called her to see how it was coming along, and she goes, oh, they play your cassette tape in the Jerry Reed bus all the time. The band plays it.
Whoa.
That's awesome.
And I said, what? No, unreal. You know, I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And anyway, but I stayed in Ohio for a long time after school, worked at a toolbox factory, you know, riveted my finger to a toolbox. My thumb was... and
that's scary as a guitar player, of course. I mean, I'm
factory
sure like
work, you know, where you're staring at the clock, you know, as it ticks every...
That's kind of like working for Brian,
second.
actually. Yeah.
Okay.
Very similar experience here. Just like, yes, okay, another pedal, Bri. There you go.
Right. Yeah, it's all you know, works out that way, you know.
Right.
Slow going.
right. So you riveted your finger and you're like, yeah, this is not the life for me.
Yeah. But anyway, I got to Nashville finally, and I was married at the time. My first wife, Kirsten, and we stayed in a basement apartment in Madison, Tennessee, which is the suburbs of Nashville. And I stayed connected with Paul Franklin. He goes, I want to show you around. You know, why don't you come to the studio with me and see how a session's done? So I got to participate as just a listener and observer of a session, and met a lot of people, you know, like Henry Strzelecki and Larry London and all those kind of people, big guys, you know, that were doing all the records. And so I finally moved. I rented an apartment. My grandmother passed away, and she inherited a little bit of money from selling the farm that they had, and she put it into, you know, she was trying to help me, and what she did. So I came here, lived for a while in that apartment, and got a gig at the Stagecoach Lounge, which you guys probably heard of that, or Brian has.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
That's where all the famous stories came from. Mm-hmm. Don Kelly and all of us, we played together. And ended up being a real hot club, and, you know, my name got spread around as being a great guitar player. You got to come and see this kid, you know, and everything just kind of cut loose from there. You know, I skipped a bunch of years there.
Didn't Chet come to that club and then ask you to record on one of his albums?
Yeah, that was a Stagecoach Lounge. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So how that must have been, being that you were a massive fan of his, that had to be kind of weird. Like, you want me to play on your album? But I was just a few years ago, I was following you in the studio. You ignored me.
Yeah, I didn't mention that one. You probably would have took it in a good stride and laughed about it, you know.
Sure. We'll be right back.
Do you love hip-hop? Hungry for the stories behind the sound? Then you should be listening to the On the Track podcast. Dive into the heart of hip-hop with untold stories of iconic tracks, behind-the-scenes tales from legendary producers, and the creative journeys that shape the music you love. Whether you're a die-hard fan, aspiring beatmaker, or just curious about the craft, On the Track brings the rhythm to life. Tune in today.
I didn't mention that.
That had to be a pinch me moment, though, where you're just like, wow.
Yeah. He did come in the club. You're right. And he was, he had come in with different guitar players that came into town. You know, that was part of the agenda, was to come out and watch me. So he had George Benson, one evening come out and hear it. And he was hot at the time with On Broadway and all of those Breeze and stuff like that. Mark Knopfler came out with him, you know, for Mark, Dire Straits. And,
he's an English guitarist, Brian.
Neil Sean, Lenny Breau, you know, bunch of, you know, they come out and Chet brought them. Mm. And so, you know, I was a nervous wreck.
I bet.
I could barely, who's that now? Lenny Breau? Of course.
So now you know how I felt whenever you asked me on the video the other day to play a solo. I'm like, what? You me? Do I play right-handed or left-handed?
By the way, it was a good.
It was a good solo, Brian.
We keep trying to tell you, Brian.
Down, man.
You know how those things go. Like after the nerves subside and you go back and listen to it, you're like, God, I was out of tune.
Did you have to go into
I was
fight or flight mode there, didn't you?
Yeah, I was trying to decide which one to go. Do we fight or do I just run away?
It was going so heavy, he almost sprouted wings and literally flew out of the building. I could see it in his eyes.
Yeah. Wow.
But I mean, listening back, I'm like, man, I'm out of time, and that bend was way off, and
we can't do that stuff.
Like I get into my own head.
Perfectionism is a disease sometimes.
That is a quote
and
I'm
fear
taking.
Adds to the element of that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that answer, you actually kind of answered a question. So, but piggybacking off of that a little bit, obviously you had some level of self-confidence to even get on that stage in the first place. But so did that just immediately evaporate, like Brian's talking about, when those guys would come in and you just kind of went on autopilot, or how did that feel?
Well, certain ones that were just I put up on a pedestal, like Chet, and you know, all the guys, Martin Knopfler, all those, you know, it's like, wow, these are the real deal here. And but it made me play. I wanted to play my stuff, you know. I wasn't totally like that. Just didn't curl up in a ball in a fetal position, you know.
Right.
I played my stuff, and I thought that was pretty good. Yeah. But I was nervous. I think nervous can work in both ways. It can either screw you up or give you a shove for the best, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And hopefully the second of that, I mean, the latter of that.
Right.
Which, you know, is,
it's interesting, though, that you mentioned Mark Knopfler, because over here, definitely, I'm going to say late 80s, early 90s, country guitar music certainly has never been as big over here as it is over there. But Mark Knopfler brought Chet Atkins over here and popularized him massively. And there was a massive kind of movement. And I think that was an opening. So it's interesting that one musician can kind of spread so much. But I think that is an important name. And that's why, Bri, you need to start listening to more Dire Straits. That's what I'm saying.
I like Dire Straits. There's just not enough chicken picking in it. You know?
Oh, there is.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Always Mark's, you know, plus his style is so recognizable. That's, you know, something that he can, you know, he can do the country thing or the rock thing, and with his, just a nice touch with his fingers, you know, right hand and left hand. But the touch that he played with, and the tones were just so beautiful, you know.
He doesn't use fingernails or anything. It's just straight.
It's all the skin of his fingers, flesh of his fingers. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's an amazing player. I tried to follow one of his sort of exercises at one point, and just the ease at which he was doing them, I was like, this guy's a natural. So I just have to settle for wearing the headband. That's the closest I'm ever going to get to being Mark Knopfler, I think.
Hey, that's closer than me, because you got a headband and you're British. So, you know.
This is true.
I got to go a bit further. So when you had all these people showing up, was there a moment where you felt like, you know, okay, I'm not the kid from Ohio anymore. I actually belong here. Was that ever a moment for you where you're like, I don't feel so out of place. This is my thing now. This is what I do. Or did it evolve into that?
It took several years or a few years, you know, but first when I sat in a session, and I was doing, the way I started out doing sessions, I was, playing these custom sessions, you know, just kind of vanity projects, you know, from artists that come in, and certain producers would call me, and I learned the ropes there like that. And when I finally got setting in with guys like I just mentioned, Larry London, David Hungate, you know, all these big cats, Steve Nathan and stuff, they were playing on country records that you would look on the back of the albums and see their names on the credits, you know, back when they did that, right? And they were the stars to me more so than the actual artist that was on the album, you know? And so that's when I was really nervous. That's when I was talking about nervousness not helping. But I must have done something right, because they all said, man, you're in with us, you know. So I got that stamp of approval from those guys, and it boosted my confidence up a little bit, you know, because I thought if I play badly on this session, they're gonna judge me by that, and that's it.
Right.
That was my fear.
This is my chance. This is my one chance, I guess, huh?
And they could probably see that because they tease me a little bit, you know. Like, it was pretty good if it was in the right key. It would be good if it was in the right key. You know, I'm going, what? You know, and it wasn't a joke. And everything was serious and scary. But I got through that phase, and then I was able to feel, you know, like one of the, you know, the cats that's the big dogs, you know.
Yeah.
So it made me be more nicer to people just coming in, and because I know what these guys got to go, what I had to go through, you know, I can relate, they can relate, you know, to how it is. But it just took a while just to, you know, I crapped my pants a few times for it, you know. I learned that that's not gonna.
This is like mid 80s or so, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere around there.
It was mid 80s, early 80s. Well, not early 80s. I was still playing in the clubs. Started playing sessions after, I think that when I got on that Stay Tuned album with Martin Offord and a bunch of other, Steve Lukather, a bunch of other guys were on that one. George Benson, a lot of guys. And that was kind of my big break, when I played on that. Then I started to get phone calls to, that kind of thrust me into the good players, the good sessions,
Right.
And the phone calls. So
Yeah, we want that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Was there ever a moment where you had to learn something you didn't know? Like, let's say something out of this, like a sweeping arpeggio, Yngwie Malmsteen style or something. Like, is there ever anything that you weren't really familiar with that technique and you had to learn it on the spot in a session?
Well, see, I never was. You can throw any song at me, and I'm a chameleon. I can play it. I'll find something. If they say, look for something, give me this, and I can interpret that and usually play something. They'll go, yeah, wow, that's it,
Nice.
Now, the only thing I wasn't that great at was, Eddie Van Halen stuff, the finger taps. I could just do the rudimentary ones, the ones that the simple ones and stuff like that. So, but I don't remember ever having to do an Eddie Van Halen intro lick on a country record.
Not a lot of
yet. Not yet. There's still time.
These days we've come closer, since country's kind of moved over into the rock realm now, rock, 70s rock, 80s rock and stuff is, that's country now.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I always find something for the song. If they explain what they want, I can find it, and they're happy.
You said something.
I don't know about Yngwie, but I never stole off him for a record. But.
I'm not sure he's ever happy, to be honest, Brent. I think no matter what happens, he's not going to be happy.
That's right.
Right. I'm always thinking that, well, these go to 11.
Yes.
Volume, man. But so that's what we do as session players. We just we kind of morph into what we're supposed to be,
Right.
Hi, I'm Vincent, and I'm here to talk about the Maris Mercury X. My dad's always going on and on about how cool Maris is. He really went off on one about the Mercury X the other day. He said something about a 4,800 hertz sample rate and 99 preset locations and 33 banks, and something along the lines of the most advanced reverb pedal ever devised by man? That's all true, but I only care about one thing. This pedal sounds sick. So make sure you check out the Mercury X and all the other fine products at maris.us, as well as fine retailers worldwide. All right, Dad, now can I have my talkie?
How exactly do artists get their music on Spotify, Apple Music, Deezer, Tidal, all these services? How in the world do you get your music there? Well, in the past, you had to use something called a record label. But these days, you can use DistroKid. DistroKid is the absolute easiest way to get your music up on streaming services. And it's the most affordable way to do so. Not only do plans start at $22.99 for the entire year, that's less than $2 a month, DistroKid also does not take a cut of your streaming revenue, unlike some other services out there. Even better if you sign up by going to tonemob.com/distrokid. That's tonemob.com/distrokid. One more time, that's tonemob.com/distrokid. You'll get 30% off. That's right, 30% off their already extremely reasonable prices. So go to tonemob.com/distrokid and get your music out there.
The Helping Friendly podcast explores the music and fan experience of Phish through interviews and deep dives on shows and tours. For more than 10 years, we've created insightful and fun discussions about our favorite band, and with the help of our guests and thematic series, we're still discovering new angles of appreciation for Phish. And when the band is on tour, we provide a review of every show the following day. As one of our listeners said, any Phish fans that enjoy meandering conversations and incredible insight on new and old Phish shows, this is for you. Highly recommend. It's not just about the band and the shows, it's about the journey getting there. Throughout 2024, we're going to be running down the top 25 Phish tours of all time, and that'll be interspersed with show reviews and regular episodes. Join us and check out the Helping Friendly podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
I think that most guitarists that are familiar with you, they know you as a studio guy, but obviously you've played stages all the time. You've done it all. Do you prefer one over the other? Like I myself, I'm much more comfortable in a studio setting. It's just where I enjoy creating stuff. I don't really like playing live that much, but some people are the opposite. Do you prefer one?
Well, right now it's a studio, but just because it's a whole different animal, whole different world when you're on the stage playing. You got to set the show order, or especially if you're the main act.
Mm-hmm.
You've got all this multitasking to do. You got to put the show in the right order, talk about the next song or switch the next song, call an audible at the line of scrimmage,
Uh-huh.
and try to play your best, and when you play live a lot, that starts to become second nature to you. It's fun. It's even more fun than playing the studio. But if you get away from it, you sort of don't feel like you're in the moment of it. You know what I mean? You feel like it's getting away from you, and you don't know for sure if you're doing the right thing or not. And so I like being a side man. I never did want to be the main act, the star. So, but playing live is fun. It's just everything. The sound, you have to approach the sound different equipment and stuff when you're playing live than studio.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, in the studio, you
just
have
all the peripheral stuff that goes on.
Sure.
It can be overwhelming
I think
if you
some
don't do
people-
it every night.
Right.
Yeah.
I think some people don't understand this part of like studio session stuff, or at least used to be this way with you, where you had racks of amps and you could, basically choose whatever you needed. You might have bags of pedals just in case you needed something weird for a particular song. Does it still kind of work that way?
Yeah, although I think I was a little more, it was a little more complicated back in the 90s. I had more stuff and used, had a matchless third. Well, I still have that stuff, a Marshall or a more Fenders than anything. Fender amps, like Bassmans and Deluxes and Twins, Blackface.
Mm-hmm.
And, but back when I first started, when sessions were, I was starting to get into everything was rack gear, digital gear,
Mm-hmm.
Everybody had these, spatial expanders and stereo,
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Do you miss that sound?
Stereo. No, I don't miss that. I don't miss that sound too much. Sometimes it works, It's just you play all that stuff, and it sounds great in the headphones when you got your headphones on. It's like, wow, I'm white as the world, And then when they come down and mix it, they just use one side of it. Mono of it.
You're just in mono anyways.
It's thin as paper.
I guess I didn't realize it.
I don't think there's not. Might be a little bit more playing stereo, recording in stereo now, but that art went away a long time ago.
Did it?
Just mono. That way you can move stuff around and add another part that you can put on left or right or center or whatever.
Well, speaking of gear, I think everybody knows you as a Telecaster player. Like that's your thing. You got the signature Tele, but do you have other favorites that people maybe are surprised? Like, hey, you wouldn't believe this BC Rich I got laying over here or whatever. Like, do you have other things that you love?
Yeah. I mean, I go in the studio and sometimes I remember a time where I didn't play the Tele at all. But I'm sort of playing it more now than I did and that was kind of like in the early 2000s and stuff.
Right.
You know, you always go in with the right arsenal. You go in, you know, with the, to me, I always, you know, when we're getting sounds, I grab the telly and I get the sounds, and then somebody plays a song and I go, that sounds more like my Les Paul for this record. So Gretsch, Les Paul, 335 I play a lot.
Yeah.
Baritones, you know, utility guitars, kind of love those. Strat, you know, that's kind of your food group there, right there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's just interesting.
If you have cartage, then you can bring all that stuff in. They can deliver it. Just take it out of the trunks. You know, when you got a session that says, hey, can you just self-card on this one? Okay. Then you got to be a little more particular about which guitar you're going to bring with you. If you just bring a telly, it might get you through it. But it's better if you can say, I think if I bring a telly, a Gretsch with a Bigsby on it or something, and then a Les Paul, that should cover it.
Yeah.
That way I don't have to go up, make 8, 9, 10, 11 trips out to the car to get the guitars, you know?
Right.
But cartage brings them in, so you got them all right there. You just grab them. You know, that's the luxury of these big budget sessions.
Right.
Yeah.
This is a bit self-serving because I love down-tuned guitars and baritone, but like, what's your preferred baritone guitar?
Well, I got a couple Jerry Jones.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, those are. I mean, you started out with a Dan Electro. I lost that in flood of the Nashville flood.
Oh, I didn't know that was gone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
I got a Dan Electro 12-string, but I lost a Rickenbacker, Rick on that in the early 60s. A 12-string Rick.
Wow.
In that flood. That was sad.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah, so anyway.
What a bummer. Is there like a piece of gear that...
let's all have a moment of silence.
Yeah, I was like,
this does feel somewhat funereal for that guitar.
Yeah.
But I have grown up, amongst a lot of Paul Weller fans who have all, at some point, and certainly a lot of Birds fans, who've all wanted that 12-string Rickenbacker at some point. I bought it with you.
It's incomparable, sound. It's just like, a lot of times when I grab that one, and it's not that one, that was gone, but I got the Dan Electro one, and it sounds great. Sounds real, birdsy, right thing. You can't match it. Go, I'll just play an octave up on the electric and overdub it, second track it. It's just don't have that sound, It's a good guitar.
Is there a weird piece of gear that you've used on a recording that someone would think you would never have used, especially on a country record?
Weird? Well, no, not anything too weird. I've never been a real drastic effects guy, Used, the choruses back when they were, were in stereo, the light choruses or Dimension D or, TC Electronics or something, special expander. But when I first started, I was using MXR stereo choruses, the big doubler yellow one that looked like a milk box or something. That was pretty cool. It had a lot of, it was more of a doubler than it was a chorus kind of thing. But I've never used, I remember using a wah-wah. And that's not a weird sound for anybody, but I remember nobody was doing it in country, and I kind of did that, the shaft kind of a thing, the wah-wah Watson kind of thing, that kind of on a Billy Currington record I thought they're going to tell me to take this and not do this. And that was way back before there was, if they did it now, that's just normal.
Right.
What was that?
But back then, that was unheard of. They're like, what is that weird effect
they're going to make me quit playing this wah part. I know that. Must be doing something right.
Oh, of course there's a wah on that. That makes all the sense in the world.
Yep. Yeah, I remember that.
More of an R&B kind of thing. I was doing that rhythm in there, and I thought they're going to Hey, this is not a porn movie, okay? This is a country record. It's
I don't know.
not a
Listen to
porn
them lyrics.
track
It might be a little bit in the.
What sort of porn are we talking about here? Because Brian gets confused when I say that word, so I have to be careful.
I did do some library music one time for Zomba. You know, like the show Friends. The show Friends when they walk on. You know,
oh wow,
that's you?
Yeah, that's me.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
that is
Isn't that crazy?
a fun fact. Yeah.
That's what you've heard Brent on things
But-
you had no idea.
That's amazing.
It's been Brent.
But I was getting at them. There was a lot of library music I did. They used at sports shows, you know, Family Guy and stuff like that. Hot Wired was, before it was called Hot Wired, was in Family Guy. It was
Was
called
it really?
Pickin'
That's
or something. Hot
insane.
Actually,
Pickin'.
I think I remember that because I remember thinking that sounds like.
But
Hot
here's the
Wired.
funny thing. I went out to the mailbox and I got my BMI check, you know, for, you know, BMI ASCAP, you know,
Mm-hmm.
multiple plays of something, and it shows you, itemizes everything. And I thought, man, this is a big check, and the paperwork was that thick, you know, it was like half
Inch
thick.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I go, what did I, something, I looked on there and went, it said Playboy Channel, Playboy Channel, Playboy Channel, Playboy Channel.
You're like, well,
You probably
all
didn't get
right.
through much of it. I never did hear the actual bridge of that song. Never made it didn't make it that far, but I could tell it was you.
Oh
But
gosh.
there wasn't. It was a pretty big check, and I didn't know. It was just, you know, when you do that library music stuff, it's like it could show up anywhere.
So how does that work? Do you just go off your gut and like, this would be a cool thing to throw in there, or do they tell you think porn?
No, they don't. Well, you're gonna think porn anyway.
There's a wah
Sometimes,
pedal.
regardless of
What
what
else
you do, you're thinking porn.
That's
and then until somebody slaps you side of the head, you know, straighten up, bud, dude. No, it's just. The thing I did was a bunch of more blues kind of tunes. It was kind of worked just when that was coming in. Those, you know, the real bluesy kind of in the desert slide guitar, you know, Ry Cooder kind of stuff, you know,
Gotcha.
and then some.
So they give you direction.
Sort of jazzy stuff that was kind of, you know, like Larry Carlton or something, you know, Robin Ford type stuff. And then there was some just straight up blues, and then chicken picking too, a little bit of that, you know, Hot Wired, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And
That's some specialist adult film that uses chicken picking, though. That's
yeah, I think Hot Wired was, you know, you'd have to be like a rabbit. You know, procreation from a bunny. We got a perfect song.
and that's
Listen,
the sound
Richard,
clip
I'll
right
show
there.
you some research materials later.
But I
so-
mean, we're touching on different genres of music.
I was going to say,
Obviously,
that's the kind of music's always in. No, wait, I ain't going to say that. You know,
but you know, I've
double entendre. Okay, go ahead.
I picked up. I think Brian shared with me in a perfectly legal and totally above board manner a jazz album that you'd done, or a jazzier album. I was like, all right, now my mind is sort of blown here. But do you like playing other types of music more than country sometimes? Do you find yourself feeling, I'm just jazz today, and no matter what happens, that's where I am? Or how does it?
Yeah, I love to play jazz, you know, but, you know, when you're in Nashville and you're playing on records, there ain't much call for it unless it's a specific jazz. You know, sometimes when those kind of sessions crop up, you go, cool. I want to play a jazz solo. I love jazz, and it just, you know, I think of all genres of music that's less used in country. Now, we used to do these country swing things, you know, those things like George Strait.
Yeah.
They all come from Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys. They were jazz.
Yeah.
They played swing music with stringed instruments, you know.
Yeah.
And Sleep at the Wheel kind of kept that going, you know, keeps that going. And it's just like if Duke Ellington was born in Texas, you know.
Right.
It's cool music, but we used to do those, but they would never come out as singles. They were kind of, you know, they were more obscure inside the album somewhere. If you listen to the whole album, you'd find this fast where everybody was picking, and you go, well, that's not gonna be a single, but it sure is cool, but nobody will ever hear it probably.
Right.
Now,
all the guitar players will love this one. Yeah.
yeah. Now, I mean, when I did that Alan Jackson song, I don't even know her name. I'm in love with the waitress. That came out as a single, and that almost sounded like an instrumental. There was so many rides in it. There was so many solos in it. I thought, how could that ever be a single? The record labels would not allow that, and it was great. And then it got a lot of, reviews, and that kind of thing, kind of made me a little more well-known and famous, that just playing on those records that had much more picking on it than they would allow, in a usual setting at a recording,
That's one of those songs I remember everything about where I was, what I was doing, and like I was folding clothes on my parents' bed, and I got so distracted by that song. It was just playing on their alarm clock radio, and I was like, "What am I hearing?" I was pretty young. I could barely comprehend what it was even going on. I remember like staring at the radio, being like, "This is Alan Jackson." Is that him? Because I didn't know, I didn't know how things worked. I was pretty young.
Staring at the radio doesn't work too well, does it?
There was numbers on it. They changed once in a while.
Ear to the radio might work better.
It was like one of those cheap little alarm clock radio things. It was just like,
right. But that's what everybody did, back in the 30s, and they'd sit on the floor in a circle and listen to the radio.
Mm-hmm.
And stared at it too.
Stared at it.
I have a question about the Alan Jackson song, and my apologies if you've already been asked this 1,000 times, but whenever you're sitting in the studio with Alan Jackson, and they're like, okay, we need a burner for this one, Brent, just go to town. Like, and you're doing that from the top of your head, right? Like you didn't go home and figure out your parts, right? You just sit there for a minute and you thought.
No, very seldom was that the case, where you would get to take it home. Now, these days, if they send you something to overdub on, or like a remote session, they'll send some files to, then you can come up with some good stuff. You can spend as much time on it as you want, and then you can really come up. But back then, pre-digital, you pretty much had to just knock it out within 15 minutes. Or you were dragging the session down.
I can't imagine coming up with that part in that short of a time. It blows my mind.
Well, on that Love of the Waitress, we were recording that was recorded at the Castle Studio. And I remember with lunchtime, we were just getting into that song. And the guys went in to get lunch, and I said, okay, when we come back after lunch, it's going to be, they're going to get to the solo. So I had a little time to screw with it, Mm-hmm. There was those things where I was playing like double stops with the open string. I found that while I was sitting there. I thought, that sounds pretty cool. I'm going to use that. And I never used that much. That was the first time, where it was chicken picking, double stops, where the open E was in the key of E. So So from the 4 chord to the 1 chord, you can still keep that E in there. Mm-hmm. I found that it was cool. That was like on the last solo.
I've tried to steal those types of licks on almost everything I do, I think.
That song has a bunch of trickery in it.
Yeah, it's a masterclass in the Telecaster. It's just in one song, in a way. Yeah. It's classic for a reason.
Yeah, now I hear guys on YouTube, kids and stuff, playing it better than I do. I have to listen to it and go, what did I do there again? What'd you? Oh yeah, that's right, I did do that. Because anything I played on, man, when I walked away, it was done with the session. I never played it again.
Yeah,
unless they called me to set in or something. I did a few times with Alan and like Aaron Lewis and stuff like that. I'd set in since I played on the album. But Alan's song had a lot of, flash and trickery in it. Those with the telly.
Right.
Sometimes I'd have to relearn it.
A lot of Brooks and Dunn stuff has some pretty killer solos.
Yeah, that's another one. Brooks, Ronnie, and Kicks.
Yeah.
Do you think that constraint, like, hey, you got 15 minutes to come up with that, was that like application of pressure part of what made that happen?
Well, yeah, it was I got used to it. And if you think about it, you spend all this time on the song getting the song structure right and the dynamics and stuff like that, which may take an hour or an hour and a half, to get the song. And then, okay, I think that's good. We got a good take. Brent, you want to throw me a solo on there and then we'll move on? And I thought, so you spend all this time on a song and then the solo, you only allow 15 minutes on. You spend 90 minutes on the song, the solo is just,
right.
And sometimes it'd be a good solo and it would be good. And I think I could have ended that a little better, I think, but they loved it. So you got to know when to stop, give it to me again. And that can be a problem. Like, don't hire Brent Mason. He'll waste all this time on trying to get the perfect solo, so you got to watch, got to have a governor on yourself on that.
Hello there. I'd like to introduce you to your new best friend, the Chase Bliss Audio Lossy. Lossy is a collaboration between Chase Bliss and Goodhertz. And it's meant to give you some control over those weird digital artifacts that come with very compressed audio. You're hearing it right now. All the changes that are taking place are strictly coming from my playing dynamics. I'm just interacting with the pedal and letting it do its thing. In some true stereo goodness. If you'd like some more details about Lossy, I'd invite you to head over to chaseblissaudio.com. I think you're going to like what you find.
Welcome to us talking about our podcast for a minute.
What's the name of that podcast?
That's Axe to Grind, and right now you're going to be getting a little taste of it, right down to the shaky microphone and all.
And my name's Bob.
And my name's Patrick, and usually we're joined by Tom.
Tom's the best. Tom has a real grown-up job that requires him to be at work, but we talk about decidedly not so grown-up things like
hardcore music and things that people that like hardcore music tend to like.
So that could be the latest shows, revisiting classic material, talking about the new classics, all the little dorm room nonsense that you imagine from niche music podcasts that you either love, want to love, or hate.
Yeah, imagine all the emotions that you have towards a genre that has impacted your life, and then condense them down to an hour to 2 hours a week.
So triangulate your speakers, think about jumping off the bed, singing along, dancing like an idiot, and listen to Axe to Grind podcast.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bruce.
And I'm Nolan, and this is the Corner of Gray Street podcast. As longtime Dave Matthews Band fans, we set out to create a podcast to dive deep into the past, present, and future of DMB.
Not only do we recap and review shows within an ongoing tour, but we revisit past shows from throughout the band's history, conduct interviews with a wide variety of guests with ties to DMB, and create unique and exclusive content like our Concerts on the Corner series.
Whether you're a fan of the band or just a fan of great music, we think you'll find something you'll enjoy. We can't wait to see you on the Corner of Gray Street.
So the perfectionistic side just sometimes starts to cripple you, and you're like, no, it's got to be good enough.
And that was more so back when, like I said, before digital.
Sure.
Now they can say, hey, remember that song you said you could maybe do a better solo. And if I send you a track, could you slap a few on there? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember it.
Do you prefer that type of stuff whenever you're doing it at home versus going into a studio situation and you have to perform on the spot?
Well, it's always fun in the studio live, playing with live musicians, the human element that's going on and the interaction and the instant, connection you make there with the other musicians. And sometimes it's magic and, but I've played so many solos. Sometimes if you send me something and I add a track to it, I can find a great, perfect sound in a solo, something maybe I hadn't played before.
Right.
You mentioned that earlier, but that's it's in the form of, when somebody sends me something and I have, you get paid for one session or whatever, but then you can play on it all day at home at your own expense if you wanted to.
Yep. So we should probably mention to those who don't know by now, I would think you do, but Brent and I came out with another pedal last week as we recorded this. We did, called the Rewired. So Brent and I think I came down maybe 4 or 5 times trying to kind of really...
To rewire it?
To come out with this new version. We spent a lot of time just making sure.
And rewired. And rewired.
Ooh, unwired is the fuzz pedal. Yeah.
The fuzz pedal version, huh?
Yeah. I'm writing that down. Not being funny, Rewired was probably the easiest name we've ever come out with.
That was Brent's. Brent's like, why don't you just call it Rewired? I'm like, that is perfect.
100%
That is perfect.
that. Yeah.
Love it.
I couldn't think of anything too clever.
That's perfect, though. And, it sets it apart slightly from the hot wired, but it's clearly an evolution of the hot wired, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
made more sense than just calling something.
And Richard did the graphics on that, Brent. So he's the when you stare down at
Turbo Blaster Shark Attack Fuzz.
That was his first name. Brian, can you confirm something that the internet is telling me? Is it basically just a tube screamer and a plexi drive?
No, not at all.
The internet is lying. There's a thing.
No.
The internet lying?
The left circuit is completely, it's not like anything. I mean, it's op-amp based. I'm going to go into some technical stuff here.
Here we go.
It's op-amp based. It's got it's using diode clipping.
Let me
LEDs.
get my pillow so I can relax.
That's what I was going to say.
All right. I'm fluffing my pillow now. Go
Take
ahead,
a break for a second.
Yeah, I'd love to.
And so the left channel is completely unique. It's not the plexi drive. It's not even based on JFETs at all. It's more based on the sound that Brent was wanting through a deluxe reverb with a Telecaster. And then the right side was kind of like Brent loved the Sparkle drive, so I tried to incorporate kind of what the Sparkle drive does, but we wanted more flexibility. So it's not like a clone of that either. It's just like, well, it is a soft clipping op-amp based circuit that has mids in it. So it's kind of tube screamery, sort of, but it's voiced different than that completely. Plus you have a lot more EQ options and then
it has a little Dumble kind of thing in there too.
It's got like a Dumble-ish type of attack, I guess you could say. So it's I'm not a fan of doing just straight up clones. I never have been. The few pedals that we have done like clones, like the Tumnus, I'm always like, well, that's great. I'm glad you like it, but it's kind of like re-recording a cover song. It's like,
there's mine. It's just a sea of distortion pedals more than anything,
Yeah.
But when you find the right one, it's like, you adhere to it and use it all the time,
Yep.
I mean, it's a killer pedal, man. I like everybody who has fed back to me personally has just been like, you can do so much with it.
Yeah. So what's cool is that little sweep, EQ thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, just simply put, you can find your sweet spot for your amp, a guitar, the right spot. And, I mean, very seldom do I just leave it on one setting a lot, sometimes I'll get in a different studio and try to look for the tone, and
that's like the number
take
one.
a picture of it with my phone,
That's like the number one question that we'll get from something like that too is, what are Brent's settings? I'm like, well, what song and what day,
See, I mean, because if you're playing through like you said, a deluxe, like if I use it through a deluxe, it's open back, see?
Mm-hmm.
So the low end's going to react differently when you know. And then if you're playing a closed back, like a basement cabinet or a Marshall cabinet, you know, you may want to cut the mid lows down or the very low end, you know.
Speaking of the pedal board, I did post a picture of one of the pedal boards you guys were playing around with when we were, designing the pedal, and it had the DC brick on it. And so I posted this. Somebody else took the picture and went, "That can't be Brent Mason's pedal board." I'm like, dude, I was literally sent this picture by Brian whilst he was with Brent. Like, there is no way that is Brent Mason's pedal board. I'm like, I am pretty sure that is his pedal board.
I think it was a picture, Brent, when I was at your house with those little prototypes. I think I took a picture of your pedal board at that time.
Because I got a lot of pedal boards.
Yeah. There's not one.
We all have, right?
I think it was the smallest one.
It was just
I had.
Yeah, just one you put together real quick. So I mean, you know,
we were looking at a certain pedal, so it was like I didn't need all these other ones, you know.
Right.
And I hate to pull and yank pedals off of my, board a lot because then you get in the next session, something doesn't work, and you got to, troubleshoot, and it's like, oh God.
That's when you call Brian up, and Brian is your personal tech, right? That's you.
I've driven down to Nashville a few times and be like,
so you should.
Let's figure out what's going on.
Brent's making important music, Brian. You need to go and fix it sometimes, all right?
Yeah, we've done that.
Yeah, well, when your favorite guitar player says, "Hey, I'm having a problem with this pedal board," it's just like, I'm grabbing my coat. Be there in 5 hours.
If Gilmore rang me up and said, "I need a muff,"
yeah. That was fun times too. That was because I'd never been in these like really big recording studios. So Brent calls you up and he's at this massive recording studio. It's like, this is the best day ever.
Well, that was good from you. That shows you the kind of guy you cared and you were building up your rapport with with all the guitar players, and they go, "Yeah, Brian's just roll up your sleeve guy," Yeah, get in there, and I think the first pedal you worked on for me, you modified was the Sparkle Drive.
Sparkle Drive, and a Blues Driver.
Yeah, that's right, the Blues Driver.
Yep.
Add a little more low end to it or something.
Yep. Oh, we need to wrap up here real quick. Okay. You guys have any a last question or so?
I mean, there's like 100 questions we could ask at this point. Some of the things I wanted to ask, very, very briefly, who are you, because obviously you are massively ensconced in the music scene, who are you seeing rising at the moment that's kind of catching your ear? Anybody kind of like you're finding yourself wanting to listen to more? Any talents we should be looking out for, anything like that?
Oh, man. There's two guys, and their last name's Mancuso. What's his first name? The French guy.
Not sure.
But there's a kid, Miles Mancuso. That's a different
Matteo Mancuso, the Italian.
He's like from another planet.
Yeah, he is good. Actually, I've seen his.
Technique is like mind-boggling.
It's wild. Yeah.
But I mean, just because I'm. Went to Key West a few times, and one dude caught my ear was this Miles Mancuso. Just amazing, like an old soul blues player, but had some chops and could sing like amazingly. So if you ever look up, Miles Mancuso, and the other Mancuso's already got his fans. There's no more left.
So I've seen him around like a YouTube and stuff like that. But I think he uses digital gear, so. Gotta work on him.
Gotta work on him.
But Miles, I think it was,
Yeah, I remember seeing videos of you and Miles in Key West. Yeah, he's a great player, man.
He's a great guitar player.
He's great.
Soulful as can be. I always go for the soulful guys, with that brand of soul that moves me,
Rather than the person trying to
touch.
Right.
Go ahead.
Rather than the person trying to play 1,000 notes a minute.
Yeah. I started off a lot of that stuff, and then I thought, I need to slow down a little bit, play meaningful.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot easier, too.
That's helpful.
That's why David Gilmour's my favorite guitarist. I've got a chance of matching his speed. It's that simple, right?
Yeah, but the tone is hard to match. His tone is unbelievably just awesome. You know, it's so rad.
You heard that, Brian?
Challenge accepted.
Man,
I've got
I always
one.
channel him when I'm doing a solo. You know, him or Angus Young or something.
We are now best of friends, Brent. You've just proved me right to Brian for 500 episodes of arguing.
That makes me look dumb because I think I've said, yeah, but he's no Brent Mason.
Or vice versa.
I'm pretty sure you've used those exact words.
I think I did say that, yeah.
But I had one quick one. I'm just kind of curious what the overall vibe was like. So, Nashville's my home away from home, so I'm usually there a few times a year. And one of the last times, I was like, "Hey, Brian, I'm trying to set up some interviews while I'm down there because for the other podcasts I do." And I was like, "I'd love to talk to Brent if he's around." And he was like, "Oh, he's sorry, he's gonna be doing an all-nighter with Post Malone." And I was like, "An all-nighter with Post? I didn't know. Okay, what is it? What does an all-nighter entail in that situation?"
Literally an all-nighter. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When I first played on this, I played on 18 songs of this new album. It was about 18. There's a lot of duets and stuff, but they booked it. They said it's going to start at 6:30. I go, wow. So it's going to go late, like to probably midnight or something, right? Oh no. You'll be heading home about 6:30 in the morning.
Good grief.
Yeah, he goes all night.
That's just how he's always created, or he just wanted to do that one this way?
He's kind of, is that nocturnal kind of person, he's just, all his creativeness comes at night. Mm-hmm. And all his energy, where I'm usually in bed snoring, but it was fun. It was like there was when it got to be about 4 a.m, sometimes I go, wow, this has got to be the last song. I don't know if I got any music left in me, but we did. And, he was, and he really surprised me how he would do country, and sing and sing so good. He's got a great voice.
Yeah.
He does.
You would think listening to his other, hit records that he had prior to that he wouldn't know country at all, but it's like Aaron Lewis.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
He sings country better than some of the country singers, they call themselves traditional.
Mm-hmm.
He did it like it's like a Travis Tritt type thing,
Yep.
It was a great singer. Is a great singer.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But yeah, all-nighters, literally.
Nice.
Yep. And he was there. He didn't go home and make us stay.
Yeah.
Much coffee was consumed that night, I think.
Yeah. He seems like a fun character.
I ain't saying nothing.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure that other products from Colombia may have also been consumed there, Brian.
Oh, Colombian coffee crystals.
He does
yes.
a lot of cigarettes, too.
Mm-hmm.
He drinks a lot of Bud Light and smokes a lot of cigarettes. So
those are his
bit like Brian, really.
Anyway, great artist.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that. I was just curious. I thought that was an interesting. That was probably one of the most interesting times I've been told. Not right now for a podcast. I was like, no, not right now because this is what I'm doing
with Posty Malone.
I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, good.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us, man. I appreciate it. I guess if you want to reach Brent, is your website BrentMason.com, right?
Yeah. Brent Mason.
Yeah. So that's probably the best place. Or Instagram.
BrentMason.com, I think.
Check out his Instagram as well, because there's tons of great videos from
Brent Mason.
You call it From the Office, I think, right?
Yeah.
And where you
Tales from the Office.
Tales from the Office. Yeah,
yes.
where you're just playing. It could be all kinds of different artists when you're literally watching him create in the moment. It's pretty amazing. So thanks for joining us, and we'll talk soon.
Later.
Bye-bye.
And there you have it. There is a Chasing Tone episode on Tone Mob. Man, that's been probably way overdue for us to do this. I hope you enjoyed our chat with Brent. I super, Super loved talking to him. That was definitely a career highlight for me. And if you like how Richard and Brian and I kind of goof off and interact, then maybe check out the Chasing Tone podcast. There are like 500 and something episodes, and I've been on consistently since episode 100. It actually went through several stages. If you go to the early episodes, you'll hear Brian with some dudes named Max and Travis. Awesome episodes, actually inspired me to start this show. Then Max and Travis moved on to different careers around episode 100. Brian thought he might hang the show up, and I convinced him to just keep it going, maybe with guests, and so he had me for a guest, and then he had me for a guest again, and then he had me for a guest again, and it went on like that for several hundred episodes, where it was just Brian and I, until we brought on Richard, who works with Brian, helping design pedals and websites and do all kinds of different things. And that was when it really clicked into its final form, I think. Brian, Richard, and I have been doing it also for a couple hundred episodes now, and it's an absolute blast. I get to do it every week. It's a highlight of my Tuesday. We record every Tuesday, and sometimes we get to do really rad interviews like this one, and like the next one I'm going to publish next week. Oh, yeah, I can't wait to share that one with you. It's going to be a lot of fun. Anyway, I'll let you get on with your day. I hope you're having a Merry Christmas, a Happy Holiday, and all that good stuff. This episode is releasing just a couple days before Christmas, actually the day before Christmas Eve. So I hope you are all enjoying the season. I hope you're getting some pedals. I hope you're doing well. I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for everything. Talk to you on the internet very soon.